Welcome to a deep dive. And this time, we're taking a classic and, well, kind of turning it inside out.
Yeah, it's really something.
We're diving into Percival Everett's new novel, James. And on the surface, it's playing with Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. But trust me, this is not your typical retelling.
Oh, absolutely not. It's like he took those familiar pieces, the river characters like Huck, and used them to build something completely new.
Exactly. But in a way that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about those familiar elements.
It's really fascinating how he does that. Like Everett, he plays with this blurry line between what's real and what's imagined, almost like how history itself gets rewritten depending on, well, who's telling the story, right?
Right. And speaking of stories, the thing that really got me in these excerpts is how Jim's language changes as the story progresses.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
At first, it's kind of what you might expect, but then, bam, there's this scene where he's talking to the scholar and he corrects the scholar's grammar.
I love that part.
I know, right? It's like, whoa, Jim's got some serious skills.
For me, that's where Everett really shows us how literacy is power. It's Jim's way to rebel. It's not just reading. It's about owning your own narrative in a world that's always trying to define you.
It's like he's finding his own voice. And not just any voice, but one that demands respect. Which, I mean, that brings us to this whole idea of freedom, which is obviously huge in Huck Finn. But Everett, he takes it to a whole other level.
Absolutely. He throws in all these different characters
Yeah.
who each have their own idea about what freedom really means. You've got these white folks claiming to be royalty, slaves who think they have good masters. It's wild.
It's overwhelming, right? Like, how do you figure out what true freedom even is when you've got all these conflicting ideas swirling around you?
And that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
He's not trying to give us the answers. He's making us, the readers, wrestle with these questions.
Hmm.
What does freedom mean for Jim? What does it mean for all of us?
It makes you think, what does freedom even mean to me?
Exactly. That's what makes James so powerful. It sticks with you.
Definitely. It's something we'll keep digging into. You know, one thing I keep thinking about is how Everett takes these characters from Huck Finn that are almost like, I don't know, caricatures, like the Duke and the King,
Oh, total.
and he makes them, well, much darker, more real.
It's really interesting,
Yeah.
right? In Twain, they're almost funny.
Hmm.
But in James, they're just cruel.
Yeah. And it's not just what they say, it's what they do. That scene where the Duke tries to get Jim to sing those minstrel songs,
Oh, God, I know.
he even wants him to wear blackface.
It's awful. It's like Everett's making us confront how horrible that whole minstrel thing was. White performers making fun of black people.
And the crazy part, Jim actually performs in their show.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. But you also see how strong Jim is,
Yeah.
to be able to find any kind of control in that situation.
He's really resilient.
Exactly. Because he figures out that even though they're making him do this awful thing, this performance, he realizes he can use that too.
It's like he's learning how to play the game, even if the rules are rigged.
Right. He sees how the Duke and King manipulate everyone.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, maybe I can do that too, but my way.
And that's where names come in. It's not just Jim anymore, it's James. And then he even picks a last name. Go Lightly. What do you make of that?
It's huge. Your name is your identity, right? And by choosing his own, James is saying, you don't get to define me anymore.
He's taking control.
Totally. He's not just trying to survive. He's trying to become something more. It's even more amazing when you think about the king running around still thinking he's royalty.
I mean, come on.
But that's the point, right? Twain made that funny, but Everett's showing us something about white entitlement. Like, some people just feel like they deserve power, even when it makes no sense.
It's like looking in a distorted mirror, isn't it? Like, what are we really seeing here? What are we believing?
Exactly. And then, just when you think you understand what Everett's doing, he throws in Norman.
Right. James's friend, the performer. I was really drawn to their connection. But then, that reveal...
Oh man, that Norman's passing for white. Talk about changing the whole game.
Oh, seriously. The one person James trusts, and he's hiding this huge part of himself.
It's such a powerful way to show how racism affects everyone. James is dealing with it head on, but Norman has to live with this secret identity.
It's like they've both been hurt by the same thing, just in different ways. What went through your mind when you read that part?
It's funny you should say that because despite that whole betrayal thing, they actually end up working together. James and Norman, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
And their plan, it's pretty wild. They're going to use the fact that, well, that slaves are seen as property to their advantage.
It's a huge risk, right? But they're like, okay, if they think I'm just a commodity, then we'll use that to get out. Exactly. They stage this whole escape and recapture thing, figuring they can scam some greedy slave owner. It's pretty brilliant, actually.
Oh, totally.
But then James meets Henderson.
Oh, Henderson. Yeah, he's a whole other level of messed up.
He's the guy who thinks he's a good slave owner.
Right. Like, he actually believes he's doing the right thing, but come on. You own people. There's nothing good about that.
And it's just heartbreaking because no matter how smart they are, how strong they are, they're still stuck in the system that's designed to break them.
It's true.
But even with all that, Everett shows us these little glimmers of hope. Like when James meets Sammy. Oh, man, Sammy. What did you think when you got to that part?
Oh, man. Sammy, talk about someone making impossible choices just to survive, you know?
No. Having to live as someone you're not. It's just...
It shows you how strong people can be, you know? Sammy's not just hiding, she's protecting herself.
Yeah.
In a world that's telling her who she's allowed to be, that's huge.
It makes you think about how freedom isn't just about breaking free from actual chains, but from the things society tries to put on you, too. But even after everything, they still run. James, Sammy, Norman. They still believe in a better future.
Yeah. And that escape, even though it doesn't last, it's like this powerful image of hope. No matter how bad things get, people still reach for something better.
I know, that scene where they're on that little raft they made, holding on to each other, it breaks your heart. But it's also kind of amazing, you know?
Definitely.
And then, of course, it all goes wrong. But even in the end, when James confronts Judge Thatcher, there's that defiance, that sense of, you might have won this time, but I'm not backing down.
That scene is incredible, right? The power dynamics have totally flipped. For once, someone's holding the judge accountable. Makes you think about how even the people in charge have to answer for what they do, eventually.
For sure.
Everett leaves us with these big questions. Will James find his family? What does freedom even mean for him now? But even though we don't get those answers, we know James found something just as important.
His voice.
Exactly. And with that, he gets to tell his own story, which, after everything, that's the biggest victory of all.
It really makes you think.
It does. Everett takes these huge ideas, freedom, identity, how we deal with the past, and just throws them right at us. He makes us ask ourselves some hard questions about the world and, well, about ourselves, too.
And that's what this whole deep dive has been about, right? Giving you, the listener, the tools to unpack all of that when you experience James yourself.
Absolutely. What stories have shaped your world? What do you believe? Those are the questions Everett's asking. And those are the questions we should all be asking ourselves.
Think about it. And we'll be back next time with another deep dive.